I have this mission. I want funeral service to be more involved in the healthcare continuum. Obviously, it's at the end of it. But the things we've been talking about, the D word and end-of-life issues, I thought of something that you said about your dad, where he made the end-of-life process tolerable and in a way memorable and meaningful. So you could look and mourn on his, celebrate his life. So you pick a blue casket because of his blue eyes and things like that. So the end of life process was not so devastating and stressful that you just wish it's over and do nothing. So I'd like to talk more about how funeral service can work with upstream with caregivers like yourself. So in what ways can geriatric care managers and funeral homes collaborate on end-of-life planning?
Yeah, so, as we spoke about in the prior episodes, I'm very much into autonomy, okay? So I don't think I've used that word before, but to me, it's really, it's all about, I call them clients, I'm not a clinician, so it's all about what does the client want, not what does the family want, and so how are we going to get there, right? So the only way really is to hear the voice of the client. We want to make sure that their wishes are respected. Mm. We want to treat people with compassion, with dignity, sympathy, empathy. We want to have open communication. People are vulnerable financially, emotionally, especially when we're dealing with, the end of life or short-term or long-term care planning, right? One thing that I think that that from your end, what you could do is, you can identify vulnerable, survivors and family members. Mm. So, you're going to be the first one to meet, and I really don't mean this to generalize because it's going to sound horrible coming out of my mouth, but, oftentimes if the spouse who handled all the financial and bills and things like that, and it's the male part of the spouse, and I meet these women who have no idea.
Never used a checkbook.
They never wrote a checkbook. They have no idea what their finances are. They don't know where their accounts are located. And again, shameless plug, like as an attorney, I know how to get all that stuff. Right. And that's, so that goes back to the holistic, because it's not just what is the care, it's what is the whole picture? How are we going to afford to pay for care? Mm. What are we going to do if we can't afford to pay for care? So what are we doing? So I think that, from your end, identifying other family members, survivors that are going to need the help, or do need the help because they're doing the planning right now, right? So you may have people who, they heard it's a good thing and they're going to come in and do funeral planning, whatever age they are, but something spurned them, right? So they probably weren't like, hiking Machu Picchu and been like, oh, let me run into Bradley and do some funeral planning. Like there was probably an event, whether it was a loved one of their own or something going on with their family, something made them come in. Yeah. So, that's an opportunity to identify others who need help. I think it really, it comes down to education. Like everyone just educating what are the different services? Who are the different helpers out there? Mm. Not just, what's in it for me, but what's in it for you. Yeah. And I think, that's how you have respectful colleagues and work in this care continuum. I think that it's important to create an atmosphere where people can ask questions. Mm. So whether they're care management questions, whether they're funeral planning questions, we've sat down and every time, I mean, we sat down a few weeks ago, right? And I was learning about things I didn't even know about. And I'm like, how can I not know this? Like, I should know this. And I was like beating myself up about it. But I'm like, okay, that's not, that's why I have to rely on other professionals to do what they do best.
Right.
And I do what I do best.
So I love that collaborative opportunity, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Austin and I are putting a e-guide together. So we want folks like yourself to learn more and more and more about funeral service and have it as a resource for you, just for this reason.
100%.
Yeah.
And just, what is it? What is the process?
Yeah.
What is the call? I mean, I know that in your literature you include the funeral planning directive, right?
Yeah.
Most people don't know that even exists.
Right.
And it's right downloadable from the state website, right?
Right.
But it comes down to, I had a client who, she knew her mom wanted cremation, but I also learned that the rules are that if there is no directive, the family has to basically agree.
Yeah.
But there were only 2 of them.
Right.
So now we're facing litigation.
Right.
Do you understand? Like, and then what happens, I hate to be graphic, but what happens to the body while all this is going on?
Right.
So we want to avoid that.
Yes.
And that's where we all partner together, because I say, well, there is this form, and we have the conversation, and then they're doing the planning, and then they know who to call, and they know what to do, and who, so all that.
The consequences of not calling.
The consequences of not calling and not planning, and
who's in charge,
who's paying for it, right?
Yeah,
so let's say you really do have someone who is more indigent, right? And how are they going to get a funeral? Mm-hmm. Because their family members don't have the money to pay for it, mm-hmm. right? So then what happens? And mm-hmm. people just don't know. I think a lot of it is just answering questions, being available, leveraging relationships. I'm big on that. Like, I don't know everything. I tell people I know a little bit about a lot of things, mm-hmm. but I do know how to find the information mm-hmm. if I need to.
I never thought of this before, but does your practice talk about a vulnerable spouse? So the client dies, and you've been working with the client. That was your primary client, the primary person. But we mm-hmm. have these the caregivers that you've been getting to know and counseling and consulting. Do you then work with the vulnerable spouse who's now doesn't have their partner and continues sort of after the care work?
Yeah, so I totally can. I think I will say it doesn't come up a ton because there really is often the person who is very, very ill. And I will say a lot of times it becomes, it opens different opportunities for the surviving spouse. Now, if they are themselves needing, support, then yeah, totally there for them. And the after part, I mean, I've been to my clients' funerals like that. They've been long time, so, it's really, I think sometimes the feeling of, just being cared for, I do check in with my clients to find out, make sure that they're okay. And yeah, I mean, I'm there for them if they have that need. A lot of times, I want to say this in the right way, but it can be almost freeing because you've cared for someone for so many years, and particularly with dementia, and you've watched them become someone who is not, is not the person that, they knew. And now people are almost left with like, what do I do with myself? Because they've made their entire lives about caregiving. And it's almost like a therapist is what they need, more than the hands-on care management.
I ran bereavement support groups for almost 25 years. And one of the major topics that would come up, and it wouldn't come up this blatantly,
right,
was the relief that the survivors felt because they took care of this person who had chronic illness or was in a care center for a long time, were debilitated, couldn't talk anymore, couldn't function, whatever it might have been, and it was just excruciating on them. I think they call Alzheimer's the ongoing funeral.
It's horrible, and it's I mean it's I told you in the earlier episode about someone who called me with early onset. I mean, I've had clients 48 years old with early onset dementia.
Yeah.
I mean, it's heartbreaking, but I think what we can do in that situation is also give people permission, because I think there's a lot of guilt in, like, you. So here you are, you have this feeling of a little bit more freedom, right? But then you also feel tremendous guilt over having that feeling.
Yeah, of course.
So how do we reconcile that?
Yeah.
And giving people permission to go on.
Yeah.
And how do we do that?
So do you think that there's work that can be done with the caregivers before the person dies to give themselves a break? That they're standing vigil, they're hyper aware of medical concerns and everything else, and it's exhausting them. But can people like you and me give those folks a break holistically, so when the person does die, they can actually embrace relief as well as sadness and grief? But is that possible?
I think so. I mean, I think that, I oftentimes refer to planning. Any type of planning is a gift. Okay, so, if you do your legal documents, you set up your advance directives, your living will, it's a gift to your family members. Because now they don't have to pick, they don't have to go through guardianship. And what I say to them is, it is your rule book. You are just the executing, but you're not decision making. And I think that is a sense of relief that, again, combining my legal and social services, that I am in a unique position to really say to the caregiver, well, hey, let's look at the advance directives. What do they want? What does the person want? Do they want a feeding tube? Do they want to be intubated? Do they want to live in it? I mean, I'm very clear with what I want. I see it every day, and I have had multiple conversations with my agents, who are my 2 adult children and my husband. And I've literally said to my daughter, you may have to fight daddy one day, because he's very emotional, and he told me he's going to prop me up like Weekend at Bernie's. And my daughter is very practical and will respect me. But I think, it gives the opportunity, if you've planned, to allow the surviving loved ones, family members, chosen family. And I use that word a lot, by the way, chosen family.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah.
Because it's not always the people that you think should be there. Sometimes it's, the one that I was talking about, in a prior episode where I threatened Adult Protective Services on the agents who were chosen and agreed to take on this role, which, by the way, you have to have those conversations. You can't surprise someone that they're power of attorney or their healthcare proxy. There are things we need to do. We need to get to the bank. We need to have it on file, because if you need to use it, it's got to go through legal. My own example, my mother had a healthcare, a financial power of attorney, and I'm her person. And so when we brought it to Chase Bank, there was a date error. Now, I hadn't seen it. It was in Florida, and then I learned all this. So, it happens. But what if she didn't have capacity by the time that we decided we needed to use it?
Right.
So there are a lot of processes. So I think that, kind of going back to the, there's the practical reason to have the conversations and allow people to mourn. Managing expectations. I'm you tell me there's going to be turbulence on the plane, I'm good. if I am surprised, I'm the person that you don't want to be sitting next to. I'm screaming, I'm grabbing strangers' hands. Like, I'm not a great flyer, but if I know that we're going to have a bumpy ride, I'm okay with it. And I can, put my movie on. So, sometimes just letting the person know as a professional that you've got them.
Yeah.
I think when you say, don't worry, I got you.
Yeah.
Like, it's the most powerful words that you could say to someone.
I really wish we could be, in what we're talking about today, we could be helpful to everybody, because I think it is so important. I have seen in my 40 years as a licensed funeral director, degradation in the mourning of someone who's died. And I think so much of it is attributed to these very challenging end-of-life issues.
Correct.
Paperwork's not done properly, and we need it, and we need all this paperwork now. The dying process is strung out and tiring, and there's always this holding out for hope in the medical field. We're going to do one more thing. We can do this, we can do that. And never accept the fact that the person's going to die. So we do good kind of planning work that this person's going to die. So
yeah, 100%. I mean, I think it comes down to honesty.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of times, it's digging deeper, asking the questions. What is the likelihood? And bring it back to comfort. Right? Yeah. So I'm always bringing it back to comfort. So let's look at the person. What do they want? Let's keep them comfortable. If we're going, I think that. I know that's not what we're talking about today, but I think hospice is the most underutilized benefit in the United States of America. People don't understand it. They don't like the word. They think it means that it's only for cancer. They think it's only because you've got, how many stories I'm sure you've heard, they're on hospice for 1 day, they're on hospice for 2 days, they're on hospice for 3 days. No, I've had clients that have been on hospice for 2 years.
Yeah.
You're giving them a better way to live.
Yeah.
And a better way to die.
That's true.
And we don't appreciate that enough.
That's right. End-of-life experiences could be uplifted in so many ways. People could have an enhanced, whatever it is, last few years or months with that kind of help and support.
100%. Mm-hmm. Totally on the same page.
So I want to thank you. You've been so interesting, and the wandering you've done in your professions and pulled it all together is, I think, very helpful for your clients. Before you leave, what would you like the audience to take away from our conversations today?
Yeah, so I think that, don't be afraid to ask questions. I always tell my kids, you don't get if you don't ask. So whatever, don't be embarrassed. There's no bad question to ask someone. You're not expected to be an expert in certainly in what we do. Mm-hmm. Your voice matters. So whether you are the person who is the patient or the person being cared for or the caregiver, your voices matter. And really my job is always to kind of flip the conversation so that the family and the clients are driving the bus and they're not letting others tell them what they should do or what they must do. I always say you always have a choice. Mm. And people are like, no, I don't. Yeah, you do. We can do nothing. We can do this. We can do this. We can do this. But it's still your choice. And I think that goes back to the word you use, which is empowering. Mm-hmm. So, I think for all of us in the elder care world, patient care world, listening to the people that you've been entrusted to care for and, helping them, just on the journey and making sure that their voice matters.
Well, thank you for giving your clients and their caregivers a voice. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.